Hi, I'm Hugh Sullivan, videographer for the Herald and Review, and I don't complain about my job much. Aside from the occasional camera problem, like the first week of football this year, or when I have to cover tragedies, which obviously bring me down a little bit, most of my job is fun and exciting. So when I get told that I'm going to be working an extra long day and driving out to Peoria for a big shoot, I don't have to worry, because I know that something cool is probably on the horizon. And that's what happened to me a couple Fridays ago. On top of shooting football that night, I had to go to Peoria to visit Caterpillar's Edwards Demonstration and Learning Center with reporter Chris Lusvardi for a media day. And I was given a heads up on what I might see, but I didn't go in with any expectations, and I was pleasantly surprised. First, as you might expect, we sat through a PowerPoint presentation where they told us about the company and gave a lot of information that the reporters who kind of cover that beat would find useful in the future. And then they took us to what I guess you could call an equipment ballet. I mean, this thing was just this choreographed dance of all these machines. They just had this giant dirt arena and brought in everything. They just, they start digging holes and filling them back in and bringing trucks and loading dirt into trucks and leveling things out, showing all the graders and the rippers and the dozers. I mean, they just did everything. And they had, one of the D11Ts, this huge machine, and there's this guy who looks tiny next to it, remote controlling it. It was a pretty cool sight. So that was impressive on its own. And then they took us into the cafeteria for some of the best cafeteria food I've ever had in my life. If you follow me on Instagram, and you should, aside from bugs and camera gear, food is one of my favorite subjects. I like taking pictures of food, especially when it's free food for work. I call it edible swag when I take pictures of it, and this was some of the best. Normally when you go to a media event, they've got some sandwiches and cookies out. This was like a full spread. They had brisket and pulled pork and salads and some of the best mushrooms I've ever tasted. That was a highlight of the trip for me because I like to eat. So after that, they brought us to a simulator room where they kind of train people how to use this equipment in a safe environment where you're not going to either hurt yourself or ruin the really expensive machines. And they let us just hop on and start playing. So Chris Lusvardi got to jump on, and he's driving around a truck.
All I basically had to do was drive around. It was a tractor scraper. I kind of ended up getting a little bit bored with it because it was just driving around, and so I was experimenting to see if I could take it off the edge. Or
I put the GoPro on my hat, and I was actually I was captured by one of the photographers from the Peoria Journal-Star, and ended up in their story that they posted online that day. And so, as a professional courtesy, I'll go ahead and post his picture taking my picture that I got with the GoPro hat. So I started off on one of the mining truck simulators. So I was supposed to pick up a load and then drop it off somewhere, and so I'm crashing into other trucks and trying to get in the right spot.
We're
gonna die. Yeah, I think at one point after I turned the camera off, I drove off a cliff. So it was good that I wasn't actually behind the wheel of the real expensive equipment. And then they put me behind the wheel of the real expensive equipment. When they brought us into that dirt arena and said we were going to be actually sitting in the equipment, I thought it was going to be like a field trip for little kids. We'd all line up, we'd stand on the excavator, they'd say pull this lever and the bucket would go up, and then they'd say push the lever back and it would go down, and they'd say yay, you did it, and then they'd move on to the next person. It wasn't like that at all. They said pick a machine, and then you sat in it. They kind of gave you a little run through of what each knob did, and then they just kind of set you loose on it. So first for me was the articulated truck. Now, I'm not sure which one it was from their product line brochure, but that book says that their line of those weighs between 50 to 80,000 pounds. So it was a lot different than the Prius. But I got to drive around in it for like 10 minutes, just kind of going around in circles, going up hills, down hills, learning, what kind of speed regulators they have to make sure you're not barreling down the road with this huge payload. And it was pretty cool.
Looking good.
And so after that, I traded spots with Chris Lusvardi and got some video of him driving.
I have to admit, I was feeling a little bit nervous given the size, the price of the equipment, that they really trusted us to get behind the wheel of it. I mean, I'm kind of taking it slow, trying to be cautious, and he's just like, yeah, go ahead, floor it, and you get up to a whole 20 miles per hour, and you can get going, and I mean, it's a big, heavy piece of equipment, so.
And then it was on to the excavator. This was by far my favorite one. I think it was because I had a clear goal in mind and I could actually see what I was doing. You know, all I had to do was just dig a hole. I was like a little kid playing in a sandbox. I just got to spend 15 minutes just digging a hole, and I even got some nice compliments on how quick I was picking up the controls, but they stopped short of offering me a job. Oh well. And then I capped off my day on the track-type tractor. You know, it looks like a bulldozer, and I figured that would be even easier. All you do is push dirt around, right? You can tell by my first-person camera shot here that it was kind of difficult to see most of the scoop or plow past that engine, so it was hard to tell if it was pitched right or if it was level. And as I was doing laps, there were a few times that I hit this rough patch that I had created on my last pass, and it just kind of like lifted me up and slammed me down into the ground. And I'm looking back, waiting for the tour guide to like be waving his hands around frantically, saying, "Shut it down, you're gonna break it." And that didn't happen. They, you know, once I stopped the machine, he said, "Okay, good job," and let me out. So after playing around in the dirt for a while, Chris and I went back to Decatur to do our regular jobs, and I've always had a great respect for people who work with their hands. So after watching all those guys run the equipment in that arena, and then sitting behind it myself, I realized just how much experience and expertise it would take to make it do those things and make that giant machine do what it's told.
Like anything, I think, until you have kind of a hands-on experience, you don't quite have the same appreciation of what it does and what goes into it that you would otherwise.
So the next time I'm stuck in traffic because of construction, you know, instead of being fuming mad, I might just watch the equipment and say, hey, I got to play in that once, and they're a lot better at it than me. So thanks for watching. Subscribe to this channel. Go check out my personal channel where I do films and other fun non-construction related things. And since Caterpillar didn't offer to steal me away from the Herald and Review and have me operate the heavy machinery, check back every week where I talk about my experiences behind the camera.